Welcome to the Rational Egoist. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, and today I think this is the most important interview that I've ever done. It's the one I'm most looking forward to, and I've done hundreds of them. And on today's show, we have the one, the only Todd Feinburg, who is not only a very good friend of mine, but he is the one that introduced me to the talk show business. Todd, welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be back.
It's great to have you here. So, Todd, the first thing I got to ask you, where you been? What's been going on? Everybody's wondering.
Well, whenever it was that I disappeared from myself too, because I came down with encephalitis, which is a disease of the brain that causes you to not think the way you normally do. So I basically lost my functional abilities, intellectual abilities, but that makes it sound lofty. But I just lost my memory and all kinds of stuff coming up on, I don't know, it must be like 9 months ago.
It's about a year. And
is it?
Yeah. And there's a lot that we're going to touch on here. But the way that I found out something was amiss is you and I were talking on the telephone, and I mentioned my deceased girlfriend, Melissa, whom you knew well and whose funeral you were at. And you asked me, why? Where is she? And I said, wait, what do you mean, where is she? And you said, well, you have a girlfriend, don't you? And then I realized, okay, something is going on. And you had been complaining, you'd been talking and saying that your back was bothering, your neck was bothering you. But when that happened, it really caught me off guard. And I told you, okay, you've got to get seen. And you said, okay. And you made an appointment for an MRI. But then every time I would talk to you subsequent to that, you would forget the previous conversation that we had. And you have no recollection of any of this, correct?
No, I didn't know that. You've never told me that before, have you?
All of this I've told you multiple times.
I figured you were going to say that.
Yeah, I have. And one of the, I don't know how I want to explain this, but I came to see you. You were in the hospital, and I came to see you, and you recognized me immediately, and we were talking. But what occurred, and it gave me a window into how the human mind works, is because the associations that you were making. The nurses you began to call correctional officers, and you were claiming that they were holding you without bail and were not allowing you to use the telephone. And then when they asked you what you did for a living, you said, are you referring to the Department of Corrections thing that I do? It was all because the associations that you were drawing from my appearance, but you weren't consciously aware of making those associations.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
It really, really was. So how are you feeling now, Todd?
Now I've got the chills because I went down to the basement where it would be quiet for us to have this conversation. It's a little cool down here. And that's how everything is. It's all spontaneous,
Yes. So last summer, I don't know, I think it was August, your wife asked me to come stay with you guys for a week to help around the house. She had to get a surgery done, and she didn't want you to be alone. So, of course, I came. And there were a lot of very fun experiences that we had. And do you remember any of these? Do you even remember?
You came and stayed for a week?
I came and stayed for a week, yes.
I didn't know it happened.
Yes, it did. So let me just tell you a couple of things. So I was in charge of dispensing the medication. And we also had to keep you off of sugar because the sugar would interact with the meds and have a negative effect. So I had to continuously tell you, no, Todd, you cannot have sugar. So you got very angry with me and you said, I would just prefer if my house guest didn't boss me around. But one of the most beautiful things, Todd, that I've ever witnessed in my entire life occurred when Rosalie was in the hospital. And, you would forget from moment to moment. So you knew she was there, but you forgot. And when you found out anew that she was there, you said to me, okay, well, we have to go to the hospital then. And I said, Todd, are you sure? I don't know. And you would not take no for an answer. you absolutely had to see your wife, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful experience.
So did I see her?
You absolutely did. Yes.
Oh, good.
It was very, very nice. She was very happy to see you. It was a great experience. One time on the road, you and I was driving a little fast, and you didn't understand why. And you told me, if you do that again, I'm reporting you to the authorities. But I can't imagine.
Right.
I can't imagine you actually would have reported me to the authorities. So, do you miss doing the talk radio, Todd?
I do. It's hard to know what exactly I miss because it's, I can only try to imagine what it's like to be working every day and to be doing something so much fun. But I do miss it, and I miss having the regular activity and the responsibility, I guess.
You said, Todd, that your intellectual abilities had receded when you had this, but I found the direct opposite to be the case. Your memory was gone, yes, but you and I were able to still have deep discussions where you were ahead of me in the reasoning process, in the insights that you were drawing, and it absolutely fascinated me that this could be the case, that even with your memory depleted, even with your brain going through this trauma, you were still one of the smartest people I've ever discoursed with.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I hope it lasts till I'm back to full strength.
And you do plan on getting back to full strength, correct?
As far as I know, it remains to be seen. There's no rules, really.
There are no rules, but you certainly are doing much better now than you were at the beginning. But even with the memory loss, you do remember like what you're going through and what you're experiencing.
Yeah, it's a brain disease. It's not a memory disease, but it tends to manifest, it seems, or at least expose itself best in the memory thing. But there's a lot of thinking that is thrown out of whack too.
So have you learned a lot about encephalitis? I don't know much about it. I think it's a swelling of the brain.
I haven't learned a ton because there aren't that many people who know that much about it from what I can tell, except the doctors who I see. So I learn stuff when I'm with them because they are seeing things that for them are normal to see. And you get to know from them what the patterns are and such.
And how are your spirits? Because you've always been such an optimistic guy, and you've helped me through innumerable down times, sad times because of your optimistic spirit. Are you maintaining that?
Yeah, I don't have any. People always ask me, they assume it attacks your mood or something like that, but I don't really have any mood changes from it.
That's awesome. I'm very glad to hear that. And you do plan on someday returning to radio, right?
Yeah, I hope so. That's what I think about doing, and that's what I look forward to doing.
Now, you remember, right? One time you and I were on the phone and you were attacked by what we think was an otter. You remember that happening, right?
I do, yeah.
Now, have they, in the beginning, they thought that might be the cause of what was going on. Have they determined that was it? Do they know what brought this on?
As far as I can tell, they have no idea, and that it comes on from so many different ways, which doesn't require that you be bitten by some kind of infected animal. You can just get it. So it's hard to know.
And how about your support? I know the family's been great.
I've got tons of doctors and people to see, but encephalitis is weird. It's an autoimmune disorder, which is something we hear a lot about, but we don't know what that is. And they don't really know what triggers it. They know some things that seem to correlate with it, but they don't have a full handle on it either.
Now, while I was there, Todd, I got an opportunity to meet the people that for years I had been hearing about. Your stepdaughter, your grandchildren. What great people. Your grandchildren are, everybody brags about their grandkids, right? So when someone does, you take it with a grain of salt. But your grandkids are so well mannered and so bright. Can you tell us a little bit about them and how they've helped you in this time?
Well, I don't know if they've helped me in any unique way. The way I think it's mostly the way family helps you, just by keeping you in touch with everyday life. But it'd be better if you led me through that part of the conversation so I can answer questions.
Okay, so your oldest grandson, Ethan, he was getting ready to go away to college at the time. And Nick, his younger brother, I think by a year or two, he was still in high school. And they would come over the house. They would, give you rides where you needed to go. And Nick was actually in charge for a while when I wasn't doing it. He was in charge of the medication, and he would walk down because they live on a path, up the path from you. So they would come down, and every time he would see you, you would be very happy. And he calls you Pap. And I got to tell you, he had a lot more luck dealing with you and getting you to take your medication and stay away from the sugar than I did. I actually had to tell him, Nick, you got to do something because he's not listening to me.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it was right. How are they doing now, Ethan and Nicholas?
They're great. They still live through the woods, and they're good natured and upbeat and take everything in stride. It's the way kids should be.
Now, have you been keeping up on any of the current events, politics? Does it interest you, or do you even have the time to do it?
The interest maybe is not so strong, and it's hard for me to stay interested in. It doesn't feel as relevant as it did before. I forget what else was in your list, but you asked a couple other good things, and it'll pop into my head.
Yeah, sure. There's so many things that I want to hear from you, and I don't want to overwhelm you. I mean, you got a lot going on, but you always were very interested in what was occurring. And not only that, but you would ask me what was interesting me at the time, because that's sort of your way. And is whenever we have conversations, I'd try to find things out from you, and you would always turn it around back to me. What's going on with your life? What are you interested in? What's your next move? But it seems as if when you don't have the show every day, that the passion for the issues kind of goes away. Is that accurate?
Well, I don't know as much about them because I'm not engaged on them every day with experts. So it's one of the nice things about having that show is that you've got the people right there to learn from as new things develop in the world and in the state. And so I would say that's probably why it seems like I'm less interested, or maybe why I do get less interested, is I don't have access to those people.
Well, hopefully you're gonna end up with access to them again, because you not only, Todd, do you need to be giving your perspectives, but I think people need to be hearing your perspectives. And I would really like, we've talked a little bit. I would like to maybe do a regular segment with you where, maybe just a story. Would you be able to do that? Like read a story and come on and give your perspective on it? I think you could.
Sure. Yeah, I could do that. It's just hard for me to, maintain focus, to plow through whole newspapers the way I used to, but I still read and stay involved with what's going on. I like watching the news too. It's fun to see the different ways they treat stories.
What do you mean by that? The different ways they treat stories?
Everybody has their own attitude towards stories or relationship towards stories, who's reporting on them. And it's always good to expose yourself to as many different takes. So, for example, newspapers are the old example because they were made once a day or twice a day, and they're very concrete. And the people who controlled the flow of information in any particular area, like politics, if you were the right politics writer, people knew what you thought, and what you thought permeated everything. So news is like that. It comes with its own predisposition. You have to get familiar with how things are being tilted, whether deliberately or not.
I like how you said deliberately, because I've long held that, yes, the mainstream media has a left-wing bias, but it doesn't have to be deliberate. It has to do sometimes, and I would argue most of the time, with how we view the world. like I do a daily show every day, 12 to 1, and I focus on the topics that interest me, the things that catch my attention. And I can't imagine it's any different for a reporter. A reporter goes out and sees things and says, wow, this is interesting, because his personal values are telling him that. And I see that with a given story. I'll hear a story and I'll scroll through social media, and depending on the person's perspective, you get a wildly different take on the same event. Has that always been the case?
I would assume so. It's just the nature of things. Everybody looks through their own eyes and from their own perspective. And then you have your relationships with people. So, for example, if I'm reporting a prison story, I call you, and then I get a perspective that other people don't have. And that gives me a different take, perhaps, on what the news is.
When you had me on for the first time, and I tell this story, Todd, all the time, we talked, we did the interview. It was about Brent McCall and my book, Down the Rabbit Hole, How the Culture of Corrections Encourages Crime. And Senator Len Suzio had arranged it for me to come on your show. And, we did, I think it was a 15, 20-minute segment, 19 minutes, I think it was. You at that point, you were doing the after 6 segments on the show. And afterwards, you said to me, how would you like to be a regular? And of course, my hubris, I said, absolutely. And I went back to my room and I said to myself, Jesus, what the fuck am I going to talk about every week? But you had me on every week. And you said that as a result of interacting with me, your view of prisons and prisoners had changed. And that impressed me because you have a strong ability to take in new information and adapt your view to the new information. And you were one of the few, I hate to say right wing, but the right leaning or, pro capitalist sort of pro America talk shows, is you never just fell into line and gave the narrative that was being pushed by others, whether it be Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, or whatever. You've always had that ability to be objective and report on things in an objective way, to kind of add a redundancy to it. Do you still notice that within yourself, that you have that ability?
Well, I don't think of it as an ability so much as a predisposition. I want to know what's actually going on. And I have a bulldog detector that goes off when I hear bulldog being slung.
You do, Todd. And not only that, but you also detected in yourself. So when I went to see you in the hospital and I was asking you what's going on, what's happening, you said, well, unless you want to get bullshit, you better ask my stepdaughter. Because what you would do is all human beings do it, but you would fill the gaps in your memory and just make stuff up. So I took you to the doctor once, and the doctor asked you what was happening, and you proceeded to give a narrative that none of it was true. And I told the doctor, yeah, that's all bullshit. Don't listen. And you just smiled because you recognized that it was all bullshit.
But I was not doing it on purpose. It was because I didn't know what else to say.
Yes. And I asked you about it, and you said, yes, everybody does that. You said whenever there's a gap, and I know this is true from psychology, that when there's a gap in memory, we will fill that gap and create a narrative. But this is one of those situations where it was so amazing for me to experience that even without your memory and even with fabricating stories, you still had the insight to understand that that was a part of human psychology. And explaining it to me, it was just so relieving to hear that you were able to do that, because then I got the sense, okay, he is going to be okay. If he can still think on this level and still has this level of awareness, he can get better. And clearly, I mean, almost every time I talk to you, you're better.
You mean from the previous time?
Yes, you're clearer. Your explanations are crisper. Even your memory is better. Although you do tend to forget what I've, when we have a conversation, for a week later or whatever, but you're still sharp in your analysis and in your understanding of what's going on.
Oh, that's good to hear.
It's like you're hearing it for the first time, Todd.
Well, I do hear people give me reports on myself, which is good. As you alluded to, I get updates from people and how surprised they are by certain aspects of my personality appearing or reappearing or disappearing. So it's good to get the constant input.
And yeah, I love it. Your spirits are still high. This is fantastic. So Todd, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here because I mentioned earlier, I would like to do a weekly segment, maybe once a week, have you on, we do a live stream, we'll pick a topic and discuss it. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I like the idea.
That's fantastic. Liebowitz and Feinberg, two atheist Jews. What do you think?
It's the only way to be.
All right, Todd, I know you're very busy, so I'm going to cut this a little short and let you go. But thank you, Todd, so much.
Are you saying you ran out of things to talk to me about?
No, I can keep going. No, well, we could, if you're okay to do it, I can keep going. Do you want to keep going?
Whatever. I want it to be natural. So if we reach a natural conclusion, that's fine. I just was surprised.
Actually, no, because now that you've said that, I want to investigate into the concept of being natural. Because when I first came on your show, you gave me advice and you said, listen, don't try to be entertaining. You said, just be yourself and you'll be entertaining. But you did tell me to accentuate my qualities and to be natural with them. It's almost like when you do talk radio, you can't just talk in your regular voice because then it just comes off dull. It's still your voice. It's just heightened. How important is that to you, the natural nature of an interview or in a discussion? And how important is it to the quality of talk radio or any type of an interview?
Well, you have to communicate in a way that's effective. And I guess that's something there's no one answer to. You know, some people can be slow and tedious and be very compelling communicators and really get their point across well, and other people can't. So for me, you just have to judge the mechanics of the voice going over the airwaves, you know, through the sound processing at the origin and then uplinked to a transmitter and then received on the other end and, reversed back down into a radio or whatever. Those things change the level of energy and how it feels. So you have to monitor the way it feels to listen to you talk. And you can't necessarily do the same thing over the radio that you do in person. So
when you're doing an interview, say when you interviewed me for the first time and you don't know anything about me, right? I mean, all you knew about me, for instance, was that I had been in prison and I wrote a book. How quickly are you able to get a feel for how to communicate with that person, how to get the idea out to the audience, and whether the person is feeding you bullshit?
It just depends on the situation. It's not a formula because it's an individual thing. In your case, you're an easy person to talk to. You like to talk and you love having the opportunity. So it wasn't difficult at all.
Now, I'm going to tell some people about some things that they may not know. When I first went on your show, you were contacted by what I assume was a correctional officer. I know it was somebody who worked in the Department of Correction. And the person said to you, Leibowitz is lying to you. He's feeding you bullshit. And you said, that's okay. People lie to me all the time. That's not a big deal to me. And he went through a few more reasons why you shouldn't have me on the show. And you said, yeah, I don't really care about that. And then the guy said to you, well, he's in danger. The inmates don't want to keep hearing him on the air. And by having him on, you're putting him at risk. And that concerned you. That kind of made a dent. And you asked me about it. And I said, let me worry about that. Don't worry about me being in danger. And I just wonder, I mean, that's just one behind the scenes story that I know because it's me, but is that type of thing common in talk radio where you'll have a guest on and people immediately start telling you shouldn't have the guest on and giving you an abundance of reasons for it?
No, it's a rare occurrence. It's a nice occurrence because it means the person's having impact, and you want guests to have impact, but that doesn't happen enough.
So recently, I called to Tom Shattuck, and I talked about the subject that he had on, and then I told him, hey, why don't you have me on as a regular guest? And when I hung up, immediately people started calling and saying, you better not have him on. You shouldn't have him on. He's horrible. All the things that people say about me. Is that good for talk radio when the audience gets angry like that? Or is it bad in the sense that the person is going to be concerned about losing an audience?
Well, you wouldn't be concerned about losing an audience. That's a good thing in terms of building audience because it means you're having impact. And impact is the point of talk radio, to get things discussed that need to be discussed and let people hear what they need to hear. But that's more contrived. People wanting to create the impression that there's outrage in response to a certain guest is more what I think motivates that kind of activity.
That's something else that I had to learn, and I learned it from you, is that you have an audience on TIC, I think, of around 20,000 listeners. Maybe 10, 15 are regular callers. And the people that are regular callers aren't necessarily indicative of the larger audience. But nevertheless, the salient portion is the callers. And I just wonder, because it's hard for me, is it hard to keep in mind that the people that call are just a segment and not necessarily indicative of the broader audience? Are you able to keep that constantly in your awareness?
Yeah, it's kind of it's one of the problems of talk radio, which is that some small percentage of the population calls in. So it creates the illusion that maybe 2 or 3 or 4%, whatever it is, I don't know what the percentage is, of the people who are listening are calling in and that they represent a majority view. We don't know that to be the case, so there's no reason to assume it.
Whether positive or negative,
whatever. It's just good to get reaction. The great thing about talk radio is that you have that energy of real people hearing things spontaneously and reacting to them. And so you want to make sure the callers are a mix of the people who are calling in with their different viewpoints so that you're getting the variety and the energy that you need.
You ever get really annoyed with callers?
Once in a while, yeah. Mostly if they're bad, or they just won't have a conversation. They just want a monologue.
Yeah, you reprimanded me for that once. You told me that this is supposed to be a conversation, not the Leibowitz monologue.
That's funny.
Well, it is, but it's also good advice. I mean, you've mentored me so much as a talk host, far more than anybody else. Your influence on me in terms of how to communicate, how to listen, that sort of thing. So that's one thing I've always liked, is you're direct. I can't stand people that pity pat around and won't just tell me. If I'm doing something wrong, let me know. That's how you get better. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. And you are the same way, that you just want to be told. But back to this impact thing, Todd, when you got into the talk business, what was the impact that you hoped to have? I mean, some people might want to have an impact on sports, on culture, on politics. What are the areas of impact that you wanted to have?
I don't know if I thought in those terms. I just wanted to be on the radio because I was drawn to it.
So, but you do have impact. So you must have some desired impact. Like, for instance, the no tolls movement that you were, one of the spearheads of, and you actually accomplished it. Maybe the question is better asked this way. How does it feel when you realize that you've had impact?
That's just kind of proof of concept. It's not an exciting thing from an ego point of view. It's an exciting thing from, we set out to accomplish this and we did it kind of perspective. But having impact isn't my goal either. I want people to want to be there. That's the impact I want to have. I don't care about changing their minds if they don't want to change their minds. That's not my job. I just want to expose people to ideas and perspectives and have it be a rich place for them to come and loan their head to us for a while.
So the impact that you want to have basically is to create the desire of people to listen, to engage broader conversations. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, it's like you want to be in the classroom every day, working with the other kids and following what the teacher wants you to look at. That's how the process is structured, and that's what it's built around. So you want people to be into that.
What in Connecticut? What was your best conversation piece? Or maybe you can't give me the best, but what is one of your most memorable conversation pieces?
Oh, I don't know. You'd probably remember better than I would, given the state of my memory these days. But the main thing is just to be there every day and to be fresh and paying attention to details, because those types of conversations that you're referring to burst out of the least expected places.
Couple things before I let you go. One is, it was recently alleged on social media that you refused to interview correctional officers to get their perspective when you were having me on. Now, I know that's not true because I know you were reaching out to correctional officers. Not only that, but I was trying to get correctional officers to come on. They just would not. But have you ever not been willing to get somebody's perspective on a story that you're talking about?
I can't answer it in those terms. There may have been a time where there was a story for some reason, but I don't recall it. But it's not the natural order of things. The natural order of things is that the more unusual or upsetting or emotional people would find a perspective, the more you want to get it on the air.
Okay, now I think we've hit a natural end, mostly because I've got to prepare for my next show. But I want to ask you and give you an opportunity. What would you like to say to your audience, Todd?
Look forward to talking again soon.
Awesome. Todd, thank you so much for joining me. And I love you, man. You're a great, great friend and a great, great man.
Thanks, Lieber. Great to be on with you.
For now, this is the Rational Egoist signing out. I'm Michael Liebowitz. Till next time.